I have 7 o'clock, so we'll call the Wetlands Commission to order. First item on the agenda is Timothy Corlett. That's to demolish an existing detached garage, construct a new 22-foot by 24-foot detached garage at 45 West Avon Road.
Okay. And we did our site walk last week, and I believe, Timothy, I'm pretty sure he's on.
Yes, I am. I'm here.
Perfect. There was just a couple of things from the meeting last week that were left to address, and I know I had shared the agenda report with you. It's really just the things from item 4. Do you mind addressing those briefly for us, and then we'll open it to questions?
Sure. So just starting with what's on top, moving the garage further east, closer to West Avon Road. My hesitation in that is because our septic system is between the garage and West Avon Road. Pushing any further towards that, I get within the confinements of Farmington Valley Health District. The setback's 10 feet, and I'm currently going to be at 12 feet. I do know that the septic system is older. To the best of our knowledge, everything functions fine now. We have no problems, but it is older, so I may be looking at potential, repairs to the septic system down the road. And the more space I have, the better in that respect. So I don't want to push it any closer to West Avon Road. My other concern is just in doing that as well, accessing the garage with a vehicle becomes harder, because as it is, when you turn off of West Avon Road down into our driveway, you literally do go pretty steeply downhill before you get to right in front of the garage where it levels off. So bringing it any closer is kind of bringing it uphill, so to speak, which is just going to make the driveway situation a little more difficult. So that addresses that question. As far as the roof water solution, I had thought of a couple different scenarios, but I think the one that would work best is to do a pocket of drainage stone on both eve ends, where the gutter would be discharging the rainwater, or not the gutter, but the roof would be discharging the rainwater. And I would bring the drainage stone, as much as a foot in front of the drip line of the roof, and approximately probably 18 inches deep. So that gives me, roughly, if you do the math, it's like 72 cubic feet of drainage drainage stone capacity on each side. And then the water would just disperse evenly throughout the soil after it got through the drainage stone. But it would be, 18 inches below grade where it's starting, so I wouldn't imagine that it would have any erosion problems. Certainly a better situation than what it currently is doing. And then another question was the remaining hemlocks that we have on the bank of the brook, or on the bank on the brook side between the garage and the brook. There are 4 trees that need to be taken down, and the committee members that came out on the site walk, they did see the woolly indulga disease that's on the trees. They saw the condition of the trees. They saw, one in particular, the larger one that's off the southwest corner, has a fairly significant lean in the direction of the garage. So really the safest approach and the most effective approach for us is to take the trees down once the old garage is out of the way. So it would be a total of 4 trees being taken down. I've already replanted 2 trees, a maple variety that is a deciduous tree that, you know, maturely is going to get, 40 feet wide and maybe 60 feet tall. So that will provide significant shade for the brook. And then an evergreen holly, which an American holly, it's a pretty large variety. It also gets fairly tall and fairly wide. I am proposing to wait on putting in any new trees until after the garage is built. With the new garage, it is a couple feet taller than our existing garage, so it will also provide more shade to the brook, but it also will limit the amount of sunshine that's in the space that I have to plant the trees. So I'm proposing to do the planting after the fact, and deciding on what goes in after the fact once I know, am I looking at 2 hours of sunlight, or am I looking at, 45 minutes of sunlight? It will determine what, can actually grow there. So, but I am all for putting a few trees back in to, kind of compensate the hemlocks that are being taken out. And then I think the last thing that was on something to consider was epoxy sealing the garage floor to the foundation. I have absolutely no problem with that. I'm happy to do that, once the concrete has cured enough and it's the right time to do it. So probably 30 or 40 days after the foundation has been poured. So I think that was it as far as the questions on the agenda. But I'm happy to answer any other further questions.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so continuing the pattern that we've been sticking to, we'll go in alphabetical order with the commission members. So Rich, any questions?
No, I do not have any questions.
Emily?
I have no questions. I appreciate the clarity of this, and I feel good about it.
Dave?
Yeah, I have a question, but I also want to enhance something I said at the last meeting, bringing up the cold water stream mapping done by DEEP. I looked into it a little bit more. I actually had some time to read the narrative, and it says that they haven't sampled all the streams in the state, so there's likely more cold water stream habitat that have not been measured. So it's not clear to me whether it's that the Roaring Brook is not on the map because it's not a cold water stream or because it just wasn't not sampled. So I just wanted to clarify that. And I did try to look at the data that they use. There's a link that you can look at the data. And when I did that, it looked like Roaring Brook was sampled for fish in 2 times, 1988 and 2007. So perhaps they looked at it and it's not a cold water stream. It's not an ironclad thing, I don't think. There's 2 criteria, the kind of fish that they found or the average temperature that was sampled. And if it meets either criteria, it made the map. So I just wanted to clarify that, not that it makes a whole big difference.
Okay.
And I did have one question too. You talked about the runoff from the roof going directly into I guess a stone channel. There's not going to be gutters and downspouts. It's just going to come off the roof in a line. Is that true?
That is how I would like to approach it, yes. So
Okay.
it comes off the roof in as evenly spacing as possible.
Okay. And that's on the east and west sides?
Correct, yes.
There's going to be enough room for, on the west side, to get it in, too close to the brook?
It should, in pulling the foundation and the building that additional foot from where it is now, I have essentially a 1 foot void already of where the old foundation was, because I do need to remove that. So there's going to be excavation work along there, obviously, but there actually won't need to be any further excavation work. I'll just be backfilling with drainage stone.
Very good. Thank you. That's it.
Robert?
I don't have a question, but I do have just a couple of comments, and this is consistent with what we talked about when we were at the Corlett site as well as at the prior meeting, and that's just the hemlocks that have been removed and the additional hemlocks to be removed. It's very important not to remove the stumps because they do provide pretty substantial stabilization of the bank to Roaring Brook, and we really want to make sure that bank integrity is maintained. Along that same line, when you do, or when you have your contractor remove the foundation, whoever's going to do that removal work, it's really important to make sure that that very thin bank between the existing foundation and the brook is maintained, because if there's a breakthrough, it's going to be really hard to reestablish that. So just comments and as the project moves forward, assuming we approve it as a commission, and to work really closely with Shannon and the town staff as the project moves forward. In terms of the presentation, I'm fine with the replanting occurring as you propose, not immediately. It makes sense to remove the garage, remove the hemlocks, build a new garage, and then reestablish the trees along the bank. And I appreciate Commission Member Fox's input, but I think whether or not Roaring Brook is officially designated as a cold water habitat, what we're trying to accomplish by maintaining some shade for the brook is important, because this is a feeder into the Farmington River. And even though it's a little stretch of Roaring Brook, collectively, the development of what happens to the waters does have an impact on the Farmington River. So all comments, but I don't have a concern with the proposal. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Okay. Mark?
No question.
Ned?
Yeah, I'm kind of with Dave Fox on I just have a little concern about the direct drop off on the roof. What's the pitch on that roof? I was looking through your, and I'm wondering if how far it's gonna come off the, cause you have you have gabled ends.
Yep, here's the,
Correct.
here's the architectural.
So it's
So
a,
you've got a dormer. I don't know how long the dormer.
Yeah, what is that, what do you think your overhang is gonna be on that?
12 inches.
Okay. And yeah, so I just, that's very, you have that narrow slope that we want to kind of protect. And I'm worried that the erosion, you might need to go a little bit wider on that stone, but I'm
Wider
18 than 18. Because sometimes on a heavy rain, that water will shoot a little farther away from the house. But I guess you could correct that if that tends to happen. So as long as we're doing something to make sure the drainage happens naturally through the soil, I think we're accounted for that. That's the only thing I had on that.
Okay.
Was that it, Ned?
Yeah.
Hey, Jay?
I don't have any questions.
Guy?
No questions.
Okay, one of the questions that I do have is I don't have a big issue about waiting until the garage is in to go in and put in some of the other landscaping. But I think I'd like to see that in this year and not let it sort of sit and brew and, you know, go back in 5 years and the trees haven't been planted. So, I mean, if this does go forward, I think what I would like to see is, as part of the condition, is that the trees be replanted this year. But other than that, any questions or comments I had, they've already been addressed by other commission members, so I don't really have anything beyond that.
Okay.
Oh, what's people's pleasure on this? We need to determine whether or not this is a significant activity or not, right?
Correct.
I would
This is
make a
Robert
motion.
Eisner.
Oh, go ahead, Bob.
Go ahead, Robert.
I believe it's a regulated activity, but a non-significant activity, so I would make a motion to view it as a non-significant activity.
Second.
Okay. Any comments, questions?
I agree with that.
Okay, so those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Okay, so it's a non-significant activity. And what's your pleasure about the application itself?
This is
When
Robert.
everybody on.
This Robert Eisner. I would make a motion to approve the application with the conditions that the applicant work with the town staff on comments and during the construction period, that the stumps from the hemlock trees that are to be removed, that the stumps not be removed, that care be taken in removing the foundation to not disturb the existing bank, and that the replanting of the trees to replace the hemlocks removed occur this year unless otherwise approved by the staff, and that the garage floor be sealed with an epoxy or similar material to minimize any possible releases through the floor to the waterway.
Is there a second?
Statute second.
Okay, any discussion?
Nope.
I will raise a question because we have one of the items for consideration is additional erosion control measures or construction fence at mid-embankment. I don't really see how that would work because it looked like everything was just about rock in that area, so I'm not sure how one would anchor it.
I was thinking just some construction fence, if we could anchor it either, maybe even at the toe. I was just thinking if anything did go over the bank, it would keep it contained and not end up downstream.
Okay.
That was my only thought on that.
Okay, but that's
Assuming we
something,
can get something anchored that does not prove to be a detriment to the bank. So we can,
right, and with what Robert was saying is the motion was working with town staff regarding erosion control. So I think we would leave that in your hands then.
sounds good.
Okay. Any other comments, questions?
There's a statute, so just on that fence, you're talking about putting it in at the base of the fence now. Because I agree, I don't think you'd be able to get it in mid-embankment.
Then it might be at the toe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know if there was just enough, gaps in the rock
Yeah.
or gaps at the toe to just, again, just anchor it, not toe in a traditional road, like kind of just a fence, like the construction fence that,
Yeah.
just as a catch in case something went
Okay.
over the bank, the Tyvek, whatever, shingle, something, that it's not all this stuff ends up floating downstream. So we'll work together in the field. I got it.
Okay, nope, sounds good. So if there are no other questions or comments, we have a motion on the floor. It's been seconded. So those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Good luck.
Thank you.
Tim, you're all set. I'll follow up with you tomorrow.
Okay, very good. Thank you all. Have a good night.
Thank you.
No.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care, Tim.
Okay, next up, show cause hearing cease and desist order for conduct of regulated activity without a permit for property located at 69 Forest Hills Drive.
All right. Chuck Shimkus, you want to unmute yourself? There you go.
Yes, hi, Shannon. If you could
Who are
just
you?
if you could just wait one moment, Mike Ancona is joining. I guess he had trouble logging in, so he's going to be joining in just a couple minutes. I don't know if Matt Davison is on the call.
Okay, I don't see him as a panelist, but I've got 7 people in my attendee list. I know. Let's see.
I'm on. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I just asked. Is that, Matt, is that you?
Yep.
Okay, so I got Matt Davison.
Why am I an attendee?
So I got a hand raised. Bruce, what's up? You gotta unmute yourself.
Are you there?
Yeah, what's up?
All right, Mike just emailed us. He didn't have a code, so I just emailed him the attendee code from the agenda. So I told him just to sign in with that, and then to just you'll see him, so you'll be able to send him over to a panelist.
Okay. Thank
Yeah,
you.
Alright.
That's my-
I sent him an email as well
Okay.
as a panelist.
Yeah, I mean, Chuck, you came in as a panelist, so you should have been, Michael should have had the same thing.
Right, because I sent him my link.
He should have got his own, but yeah, okay, whatever. He would, everybody got their emails all went out the same day.
Shannon, does it show he's trying to join yet?
I'm not seeing him, no. So I've got you and Matt, but not him.
Shannon, I'm just going to call Mike on the other line. Give me 1 minute.
Yep.
Shannon, Mike's having some difficulty joining for some reason. I think we probably could just get started, and hopefully he'll be able to join us shortly.
Okey doke.
Okay?
Well,
All right.
I'm assuming he saw the plan that you folks submitted, so that's really all that's up for discussion.
Yeah,
at
no,
this particular point.
yes, he's seen the plan, absolutely. All right, so this is Chuck Shimkus. I'm an attorney in Hartford. I represent Michael Ancona at 69 Forest Hill Drives. With me this evening is Matt Davison. Matt, can you say hello?
How you doing? Matt Davison.
All right. So this is the continued show cause hearing regarding 69 Forest Hill. And in front of you is this map that shows the limits of the vernal pool, as well as what we propose as the 50-foot conservation easement boundary, and an area of restoration with a note with respect to the underground septic system. So at this point, I'm going to ask Matt if you would please just describe what this map shows, what your findings are, and what you're proposing with respect to a restoration plan.
Thanks, Chuck. Again, Matt Davison for the record with Davison Environmental. So I think 2 meetings ago, I presented this restoration plan to the commission. And after that initial meeting, it was brought to my attention by the owner of the property that there's a septic system in that area. And I was provided with with an old plan, I believe it's from '76, that showed the septic system, the leach field, and the septic tank. I tried initially to locate that with respect to the restoration plan, but I was having difficulty. There's no scale bar on the plan, and when I printed it, doesn't print to scale. So rather than try to essentially guess where it is on here, I just added a note to that, essentially saying that the limits of the septic tank and the leach field would be staked prior to the planting plan being initiated, and that woody vegetation would be excluded from that area. I do suspect that, based on the plan, that the leach field and septic tank will occupy at least a portion of that restoration area. And I also changed some of the notes on the second page as well, essentially to the same effect, just excluding woody vegetation from that area.
Matt, when you say woody vegetation, is that the larger deciduous planting, but the shrub plantings would be okay? Or you would not?
I excluded I just referenced emergent vegetation essentially.
Okay.
So Matt, in connection with your restoration plan, just so that it's clear to the commission members, when ultimately they're out in the field and can locate the leaching fields, the septic system, and the septic tank and so forth, and the piping, what would be over that portion of the restoration area?
I think just emergent vegetation. I don't think I provided a spec for a seed mixture. I mean, in my opinion, I think as long as the area is vegetated, it's fine. I mean, the most important thing would be that the soil is stable in that area, obviously. So I don't know that it matters what type of vegetation, in my opinion, is there. I think I referenced grasses and forbs in the notes on the second page.
Okay. And with respect to the 50-foot boundary line, Shannon, over the past couple months, has provided me with a form that is acceptable to the town for a conservation easement and an integrated pest management plan. The one caveat that I would like to mention, though, is although the easement is agreeable in the form that was presented to us, we would need to have a provision in there that if any portion of a leaching field or the septic system in general encroaches into the conservation easement boundary area, that we would be able to still maintain and repair that, because it is my suspicion that at least a portion of the leaching field does encroach into that 50-foot conservation easement boundary area. Is that your understanding as well, Matt?
I would agree with that, yeah.
So we would certainly want to draw into the easement, conservation restriction easement, just that we would be able to maintain and repair the current septic system, and even if it does, if it is within the limits of the conservation easement boundary. Matt, if you could also address for the commission, because it's been a couple months or at least a month, whether the tree cutting that did take place had any impact on the vernal pool.
Yeah, I think in my initial report, I referenced the fact that I did not feel like the cutting on the edge of the yard area had an adverse impact on the pool. I think it's far enough away, and like I had explained before, the critters that use vernal pools use a very large area around pools in all directions around pools. You know, an area that's typically, you know, 750 feet is what's acknowledged as critical terrestrial habitat. So there's a very large area surrounding the pool that's currently providing habitat. So the cutting of trees in a narrow band along the yard there, I don't feel like would have an adverse impact on the pool. I would feel differently if there was a situation in which more trees were cut closer to the pools, and more importantly, that there was active erosion or sedimentation of the pool as a result of the activity. But it was really just cutting along the edge of the old yard area there. So I think the things that are occupying the spotted salamander and potentially wood frog that are occupying the pool are probably coming in from other areas that are less developed in the direction of the, you know, Eversource transmission line, where there's intact forest blocks rather than the residential developments that are sort of on the Ancona side of the pool.
And although Mike Ancona, the homeowner, is not on the phone, I can certainly represent to this commission that in the tree cutting that Michael did do, he had absolutely no idea that he was within the buffer, and you know, was made aware of it by the town and immediately ceased cutting any and all trees, and certainly has been extremely cooperative, I believe, and I think Shannon, you would agree, with the town in trying to resolve this matter. He has, you know, done what I think, you know, a responsible homeowner would do when made aware of this situation, and has acted, I think, in the best interest of all parties, including, you know, the town. So, you know, with his cooperation, being certainly unaware of this restriction and his cutting, that I would certainly request that this commission not recommend any fine. My client has and will continue to expend a fairly large amount of money between that, myself, survey fees, restoration, and so forth. And certainly I think we would ask that the commission not recommend any fine in this matter. The client has been cooperative. He's trying to do everything he can to rectify this situation. And certainly anything that he did with respect to the cutting was purely innocent. And as I said, since he was made aware of it, he stopped immediately and has been cooperating in trying to, you know, come to a restoration plan that's acceptable to the town. Matt, is there anything?
Mike, hang on, I think Mike's on the phone.
Oh, Michael, are you on?
I got on.
Okay, great. Michael, I was just making a representation that you had no idea that you were within the limits of this vernal pool and the buffer and so forth when you were doing the cutting, and when you were made aware that, you know, you couldn't do this without going through the town, you stopped immediately. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right.
That is correct.
And certainly since the time that, you know, you stopped, you've been working to, you know, devise a restoration plan with Matt, and that plan has now been presented to this commission and described by Matt. And we did describe the issue with respect to the septic system, leaching fields, and the what would be over those areas, and those will be marked out in the field when ultimately the plantings are done. So we also did talk about the caveat that we'll need to have the the ability to repair or maintain the current septic system, even if a portion of it, i.e. the leaching fields, encroach into the conservation easement boundary area. So I think that brings you up to speed, Mike, on what we've discussed so far.
Yep.
Matt, is there anything you'd like to add?
Hello?
Yes, Mike.
No, I've been here. It's just, I don't know. I had it muted. I didn't.
Oh, okay.
I
All
can
right.
hear you, but you can hear me.
Oh, okay. All right. Matt, is there anything else that you would like to add to give any more information to the commission?
No, I'm all set.
Okay. I guess having said that, we would open it up obviously to questions.
Okay. So continuing the game plan as the rain starts pouring down. Rich, any comments, questions?
I have no questions at this point.
Emily?
I also have no questions. Sorry, I'm outside. It's very loud with all the heavy rain.
Yeah, well, I'm closing windows now, so I know what you mean. Dave?
Yeah, I had a question. The extent of the restoration area have all the trees been removed from that as part of the cutting, except for those 3 hickories? It's strange that it's superimposed over an old aerial photo, so it looks like it's all tree, but obviously it's not. I was just wondering the extent of the clearing.
Michael or Matt, can you field that question, please?
To my knowledge, the trees are still on the ground there. And in my plan, I had also referenced leaving some woody debris behind, preferably hemlocks, obviously outside of the leach field area, but you know, that you can leave behind some of the stuff. But the last time I was out there, everything was still the way it was originally.
But the trees were cut down within that area?
No. Not within that 50-foot area.
No, in the restoration area. Yes, Dave, for the most part, the restoration area aligns with the area where the tree cutting occurred. Matt,
Okay.
is that a correct statement?
I figured
That's
that.
correct. Yeah,
I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, the restoration area was actually a field GPS of the cutting area. There were a couple trees that remained in there that are also shown on there.
Yep, the hickories, they show. Okay,
Yep.
Thank you. That was the question. So yes, Dave, it was superimposed on the aerial, but that white line around is basically the tree cut area that is now the restoration area.
Very good. And I don't know too much about leaching fields. How big are they? Like in relation to the restoration area, even if it's partially within, if it was totally within, how much of the restoration area might that encompass?
So until we start to locate it in the field, this is the mapping that we have available from Farmington Valley Health, the house, the sewer line, distribution box, another sewer line, and 3 rows of leaching fields. The size of the leaching field depends on the size of the home and the quality of the soils in which the leaching field is installed. So it's going to have to be field located, and then we'll adjust the plan accordingly. So presumably there's a clean out for the septic tank. We'll be able to find that and go from there.
Okay.
And at the end of the day, the area was all treed. You can see there's 3 hickories that were there in the middle of it. So I tend to believe, one, either a whole passel of trees were allowed to grow on top of the leaching field to begin with, or the leaching field is actually closer to the home and this is really a non-issue. So I've got a feeling it's perhaps a little closer to the home than as it's shown here, because there's really no good reason for it to be quite so far with 2 25-foot lengths of pipe away from the home. So it's probably closer, and it perhaps is just hitting the edge of the septic field with the restoration area. And like, it's easily adjusted in the field with the shrubs and the tree locations.
Okay, thank you.
Is that it, Dave?
Yep.
Hey, Robert?
Yep, I think I'm muted.
No, I just heard you.
You unmute.
Okay. Good, thanks. No questions. Thank you.
Mark?
Well, I appreciate the 50-foot conservation area. Are there any, after you agree to that area, is there any future possibility you might want to clear more trees along the border of your property, or this is all the clearing you're going to do? I guess that might be the homeowner.
This all started out, we were just clearing trees that were in proximity to the house for potential damage to falling to the house for safety of human property safety. That's how this all started. So, we weren't looking to clear out the lot.
Okay, but I have a question for Mike. You said you don't think the canopy cover was affected that much. Now with all the leaves in full bloom, you said you don't think there's an issue at all. You saw it back in April, but now we're talking about June. You do feel that there's enough coverage?
Do I feel there's enough coverage for the pond?
Yeah, for the pond.
Yeah, and it's sort of hard to describe. But when you're out there, there's already a cleared area that's been cleared for I don't know how long. There's where the septic tank system might be. Any trees that were within proximity to the house were removed, and in the back of the house, there really wasn't that many that were dropped that were within that, even that, closer to the left side of the picture where the new area would be reconstructed, or let me get the wording right.
For the restoration?
Restoration area, correct.
Oh.
Most of that right area in the restoration is pretty much was already cleared. There's already a grassy field there that was there. Most of the trees we dropped were onto the right side of the house and to the left rear. In that area where you have your marker now. The area where towards more the center of the restoration area, that's been already was cleared who knows when. That's a whole grassy area back there.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Is that it, Mark?
Questions? No more questions.
Okay, Ned?
Yeah, you made a statement that you think possibly the leach field goes into what is the proposed conservation easement, and that you would want the right to access the system and repair it if necessary. Is that how you're stating that?
Absolutely, that's correct, yes.
Okay, now, usually, if your system fails, your leach field, your only option is to not so much dig that one up, is to you have another leach field in the another area where you put the leach field. And I'm wondering, are you going to need to leave room for what a future leach field might be, or is there something, I don't know, outside of the restoration area? Because I'm just thinking, like you said, you had a plot plan from 1976. So usually on a
it shows right here.
It's right there. That's the plan that's on the screen now.
Yeah.
It shows right here, and it shows this.
The secondary field. That's what I'm saying.
The secondary field. It could also be installed over here.
Okay.
So there's plenty of land over here, and because of the age of this, it's going to have to be retested anyhow. So it's going to have to be retested, and the separation distance from a body of water to a leaching field, I believe, is 50 feet. So the 50-foot conservation easement is not going to restrict the leaching field, because under today's current regulations, I'm fairly certain that they couldn't put it within 50 feet of the pond anyway.
Right,
So there's
What?
lots of other areas. You could come over here.
okay.
Thankfully, the property is quite large, so there's plenty of opportunity. Actually, the further back you go, the more rock there is. So I'm not sure, the depth of rock on either side, east or west, but there is plenty of room east and west. The well here is at the front, so there's certain distances from the well at the front of the house. But even, again, there's still room off to either side to accommodate a new field, should that be necessary.
Yeah, because the point I'm making is that the backup field is actually either further into the boundary.
Correct.
So if you needed to do work, or if you thought it was a failure, I don't know if there's a reason to give access to that field, because your replacement field is going to be closer to the house, either to the left or to the right. I guess I don't have a problem with saying you need access to build on it, but or to work on it. But it really wouldn't be, you don't dig these up and then try and put new ones in the same place, because that's not how it works. You have to find a new field location.
But if he has maintenance or whatever, I mean, this is,
Yeah.
it's not going to be an exception to put a shed or a pool there. It's an exception to maintain his existing septic system.
All right, that's all I have a question for.
Jay?
I don't have any questions, thank you.
Aye?
Are they going to make a plan that shows the septic field and the house and vernal pool so that we can see the relative positions along with this restoration area? Because right now, I don't know where it's going to be exactly, and it would seem to be that that's an important issue.
Well, this is what they've presented to date. We'll be getting a conservation as part of the finalized conservation easement. If everyone is satisfied with the conservation easement, then this is being turned over to the surveyor. The conservation easement will be located on the survey plan. We can request that the restoration area and the septic field also be located on the survey plan. They're trying to go to the surveyor just once rather than have 4 or 5 iterations with the surveyor.
Well, the thing that I was concerned about is that the observation by the lawyer that if this restoration area is actually over the septic system, then they won't be restoring it the way it looks. And consequently, I'm asking to see where the septic system is so I can see just how much of this is actually going to be restored. You catch what I'm saying?
I do.
So basically, Guy, you're just asking that if the plan has to change, that be incorporated in the final plan so we know what's going forward?
Well, I think that it's important for us to know where this restoration is going to take place. And if what he's saying to me is that if what is shown on this plan is actually over the top of the septic system, that won't happen. So I'm wondering where the septic system actually is to see whether or not it impacts this restoration area.
So I think to answer Guy's question, that goes over to the property owners.
Okay, well, this is Chuck Shimkus. I mean, certainly the septic system is within the confines of this restoration area. And even the note makes mention of that on the plan. But I think Shannon's representation that we're looking to go to the surveyor once. We'll cite it once. Once we're getting our survey put together with a conservation easement, we'll be able to cite where the septic system leaching fields are within the body of that restoration area. And obviously, we're going to do our plantings. I don't think anybody would want us to do plantings on top of our septic system, specifically the leaching fields. So ultimately, there will be a plan, and the plan.
No, I'm not suggesting that. What I'm suggesting is this current picture is not accurate as to what the actual thing is going to look like. I want to see what the actual thing is going to look like before I vote on in this proposal.
I'm just trying to figure out what to say, Guy. And I think we have an idea of where the septic system is. We know that it encroaches some. But if it's a matter of just sort of moving some of the proposed trees around, all within that area, is that going to be problematic? Or are you looking for exactly where stuff is being proposed? Because there could be field conditions, but there could be ledge or some kind of rock out there where you can't put the trees in there anyway. You know, I mean, maybe it's within 5 feet or so.
Well,
but again, based on field conditions.
Bob, I can appreciate that. What I'm concerned about is that this restoration area with its plantings is not really what's going to happen. I want to see what's actually going to happen. And if they have ledge that they can't plant the trees, we should know about that. We should know whether or not part of this restoration area is over the top of the septic system and they can't be planting trees on top of it. Rather than show me this outfit here that they know ahead is not really how it's going to look. And I want to know how it's actually going to look. That's all. I'm concerned about the vernal pool. To me, that is the thing that is our concern to save. And right now, we are allowing this penetration of what we would normally have as 150 feet. And the biologist there is talking about 750 feet. We're allowing that to be.
Envelope is 100 feet, and there's already disturbance within the 100-foot buffer and the 150-foot buffer because of the houses that are built and the utility easement.
Exactly. So I'm trying to minimize any impact on that vernal pool that we have the ability to minimize at this late date.
Well, Matt, maybe you could speak to it. I think this was mentioned early on, was that the cutting that did take place had no impact or has no impact on the vernal pool. Is that correct, Matt?
That's my statement, yes. I mean, typically it's not until you reduce forest cover to below 25% or by 25% within the 750 feet that you start impacting a vernal pool. So, you know, cutting, you know, however many 3,000 square feet of trees along the edge of an existing yard, it didn't have an impact on that pool. So, I mean, that's my opinion.
Aren't you concerned that the electric company's property has been denuded of trees on the other side of that pool so that it has been impacted over there?
Yeah, but guys,
if you look at the
all areas we have in
the photo, yeah.
If I what?
If you look at an aerial photo of that area, you'll see that within 750 feet, it's almost entirely forest, with the exception of a few house lots. The transmission line, the yard, are barely visible within that area. It's a large area that's currently providing habitat. So, you know, the fact that there's a transmission line corridor and residences, you know, it's not currently impacting that pool.
That's all I have.
Okay, I mean, I think the biggest question that I have is, now that we know that there's a wetland / vernal pool in this area, and then on one of the other maps, a quote-unquote dry pond, and we've got the 150 upland review area, I guess basically what I'm getting at there is that the property owner should be on notice that it's not a good idea to go and just start cutting trees before going in and talking to somebody in the planning office to make sure that what they're proposing to do on this site is in fact allowed on this site. So this is more of a statement, not so much a question.
Well, this is Chuck Shimkus. I think Michael is well aware now, and also remember the conservation easement will be a recorded document now on the land records, which will, you know, run with the land, whether Michael's the owner or any subsequent owner.
Yeah, and on that, so for example, with the caveat that the property owner be able to do any type of repair work on the existing septic system should it be required. Again, my hope is that having gone through this, they will at least know to go and talk to Shannon or somebody else in the planning office before they start doing work, just to make sure that the planning office is cued into what's being proposed on the site. So even
See,
on some of the
I would like to know whether or not the septic system runs into the easement area, for example. So that's where it's going to happen, the repair work, if it happens there.
Now, Shannon, I thought you said that one of the things would be done is they would have to locate the leaching field out in or out on the site. So they would probably put up some kind of corner post so that you know where the system is.
Right, we'd have to do some test beds, so presumably we'll be able to get to the D-box because of the clean out, hopefully for that. And then for the leaching fields itself, it's typically what they'll do is start the camera, they'll scope to try to get to the distance of that first field, and then we can do some test pits down to find the additional trenches, and then mark out that area. But it requires locating the box, scoping, and locating these ends, which can be done. It just, again, they wanted to get, before they spent a lot of money doing a lot of field work and doing, because then they also, you've got to get the holes dug to find these, is just to make sure that there's some, are we headed on the right track? Is there a consensus that this is the direction that, you know, the commission wants them to go? Is there a consensus that the conservation easement is, in general, what you folks are looking for? You know, this is the first time you're seeing the plan, so they didn't want to, again, do a lot of investigative work only to find out that, no, this wasn't really what we had in mind and we want something else. So it's trying to find a happy medium, and, you know, I think if they're going to agree to the quantity of planting material, again, I'm hard pressed to believe we had 30-foot oaks over top of the existing leaching field to begin with. So my guess is that area that was the lawn or that is in closer to the home is where the leaching field is. But this is the best, what I have up on the screen is the best mapping that we have available to us at this particular point in time.
Shannon, let me ask you this. In terms of surveying on this, at what point in time would a surveyor come in? Typically. And the reason I'm asking is because if the first part of this is going to be finding where the cleanout is and then trying to locate the leaching field, and granted, that may or may not have an impact on the restoration plan, are we in a position to maybe go forward with allowing them to do the investigation of the septic system to find out what the parameters are on that? And then sort of superimpose that over the restoration plan, and if it's got to be modified a little bit, at least we know what it would be?
Yeah, at the end of the day, the commission needs to decide if the plan that's presented is sufficient, understanding the ambiguity associated with it and allowing staff to make modifications in the field and report back, or we proceed with all the investigations immediately, and the surveyor then will have to come out after the investigations are completed. Surveyor come out, locate everything, and field locate the flags that Matt hung for the vernal pool, and throw everything onto a traditional survey plan. So I guess that's kind of the two things. So to have the surveyor come out one more time, that's what we'd have to do the septic system investigation first, and then have the surveyor come out, pick up everything. So I think Matt had indicated this, like the survey flags, this plan because of the age of it and the nature of the GIS and the aerial imagery, not everything's aligning. It's making it difficult then to align the field location of the restoration area and the vernal pool edge with the plan and get everything to line up. So the surveyor would have to go out and pick everything up in one shot. Matt and Chuck, if I mischaracterized something, please feel free to step in.
No, this is Chuck Shimkus. I agree with you, Shannon. I mean, this homeowner has already spent significant amounts of money on just getting to this point, you know, to go ahead and do the investigations, draw the maps and so forth, and then find that the commission wants something else. I think it's unfair, frankly, to the homeowner. We're certainly willing to cite the boundary line of the conservation easement area. We're willing to have a recording of that document on the land records. We're willing to do the restoration plan. We just are asking that, you know, the restoration area be modified in the field when ultimately they figure out where exactly the septic system and the leaching fields are located. I don't think anybody, you know, would require us to plant trees over the septic system anyway. So, and if the septic system actually encroaches a little bit into the conservation area, we're still establishing a conservation area. The septic system's been there since 1976, or at least that's when the plan was approved. Certainly the commission wouldn't be, I wouldn't suspect, would not ask us to change the leaching field. So we're agreeing that, you know, just conceptually to all these different caveats, and it'll be cited in the field when the surveyor does the ultimate survey, present it to staff, and they'll review it to make sure it at least lines up with what the commission has given us for mandates in this matter. So I just think it's the most economical way of going, and the commission still is receiving all the different conditions that they want to attach to this matter.
Excuse me, but what is the purpose of this restoration area?
Matt, do you want to field that?
I'm sorry, I missed the question. What was it?
What's the purpose of this restoration area?
Biologically, there's very little value to it. I think it was requested initially by the commission or by somebody. But I mean, you know, biologically, it doesn't do a whole lot.
Then why are you doing it at all?
if the commission would allow the plan to go forward without it, or the property owner to proceed without it, I wouldn't argue against it.
I could certainly speak for Mike, and Mike, you're there, but we would certainly be willing to proceed without the restoration plan and just have the conservation easement.
This is Ned Stachin. I think this plan looks very good. I understand that we're not gonna know exactly where the septic system is, but I think it's been laid out well, and it can be adjusted to show where it is. And there wouldn't be, or there shouldn't be any large tree plantings over where the septic system was to begin with. So we shouldn't expect a lot of trees there. And if a couple of the, deciduous plantings have to be moved, 10 feet one way or 20 feet the other way, then I think we're still going to maintain the integrity of the restoration plan. And I think the restoration plan is important. That's why we're here. And I think we should, give the message that this is a good plan going forward. I do think that as long as we locate where the leach field is, we know whether or not it's into the conservation easement boundary. And the other thing I would like to have located is a suitable location for a secondary field if that's necessary in the future. Hopefully closer towards the house and still outside of the 100 foot from the well. But I think, if we head down this road, it looks like we're off to a good start, and we just need to accept that. There's going to be a little bit of changes where a shrub might go or where a tree might go. But I think overall, the plan is going to be very good.
I would agree with you, Ned. Are there any other comments from commission members?
Nope.
None from me. This is a challenging situation. That's all.
So I would be willing to entertain a motion on this project. But again, I think my caveat is that changes to the plan or work that would be done in the conservation easement area, if necessary, if had to be because of the septic system, or any repair work that be done because it is in an upland review area, that be cleared through the planning office before going in and doing the work. Again, that's assuming this go forward and this gets approved. So do I hear anybody making a motion one way or another on this project?
All right, this is Stachin. I'll make a motion to accept the restoration plan, understanding that it still needs work in regards to locating the septic system and the leach fields, and that, the final locations of deciduous trees and the shrub plantings will be adjusted without ruining the integrity of the overall plan. I think there's room within the plantings or, within the restoration area to make some adjustments on the plantings for the leach field and still be able to restore the property appropriately. But again, and the other thing as I mentioned, I think we should know where a future leach field would be allowable for that.
Without starting to do soil tests and have the Farmington Valley Health Department there, you can't definitively tell where a septic system is going to be. I think we're reaching.
And that's really something that would occur should this system fail and they need to build a new system.
And then it's got to go to Farmington Valley Health.
Okay,
and
all right,
at that point, anyhow.
Yeah, that's right. The new field would need to be approved. That would be a whole separate approval process.
Yep.
I'm just saying the original plot plan has what looks like the system. What I'm concerned about is the original plot plan shows the second system area, which looks like it'll be in the middle of the conservation easement boundary, which I think is something we want to avoid. But I think if somewhere down the road the system fails, the conservation easement is there, that the planning department will know to look for other locations for the leach field as opposed to a last resort in the conservation easement. So the motion is to accept the plan with the understanding that the leach field, the existing leach field will be located, and that there may need to be some minor adjustments to the plantings based on the leach field, and that's it.
Is there a second?
And the acceptance of the proposed 50-foot conservation easement boundary, which they've already agreed to.
Okay. Is there a second?
This is Jay, I'll second it.
Discussion?
Hi, this is Robert. I think the course of action is correct, and I just want to be clear that based on the discussion in Ned, I hope this is what you would want in the motion, is that the conservation easement would not preclude placement of the septic system in the future.
Yes.
Any other comments? No? Okay, so first part of this is those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Abstaining? Okay, that's phase one. Second one, item 11, recommendations to zoning enforcement officer regarding fines, if any. Any comments on that?
This is statute. Usually we get an accounting of how much money has been spent on the restoration, and I know it's already been a sizable amount, so, because we generally, if we determine a fine, we take those things into account, that the expenses that were incurred to bring the property back to good standing. So I don't know if we want to start with a fine now before we know a little more what the costs are.
So my question to you then is that, are you looking at maybe withholding an opinion on a fine until we get more details?
If I may, this is Chuck Shimkus. I can give you details with respect to the fees for Matt so far and myself. What I can't give you is what the ultimate survey fees are going to cost, as well as the restoration. The survey fees are going to be substantial, obviously. You know, Matt's fees are well over $2,500, mine are as well. And, you know, frankly, we're just kind of in the beginning stages here. We still need to do a fair amount of drafting with respect to the conservation easement. There'll be a significant amount of work done on the surveying work. I think it's fair to say that the homeowner is going to incur, you know, costs in excess of $10,000. And if the commission needs more detail than that, I won't be able to give more detail till ultimately we incur the bills.
No, I mean, I understand what you're saying. My question to commission members is, would they feel better holding off on making a recommendation on any fines until we get that information and then render a decision at that point in time? I think we can do that, right, Shannon?
I'm sorry, Bob, say that again. We're gonna,
Can we hold off on recommending any fine, whether it's a yes or a no, until we have more information as to the actual costs and things of that nature? I mean, do we have to recommend a fine now, or what period of time do we have before we have to make a decision on that?
yeah, I think we're fine from a time frame with respect to that. And from a staff standpoint, honestly, we would recommend that, yeah, I don't believe fines are warranted in this instance. But the notice of violation was sent. It is a cease and desist. But no, that decision does not have to be made tonight.
Okay,
Bob, this is Mark.
go ahead.
I was leaning the way Shannon's thinking. I think in this case, this was not intentionally done. We've seen cases where people intentionally do damage, just go out and do it. This issue, I think, is a little bit a different situation. But I think we should wait for people to have the opportunity to see what restoration costs are and then make a decision then.
That's kind of where I'm going. So, other comments?
I agree with
This
that.
is-
I think we should.
This is Jay. I agree as well.
You need a motion?
Before I make the
No.
motion, this is Robert. I generally agree with the discussion, and I think that the favorable actions by the property owner and his team are certainly going to weigh heavily into what we ultimately decide. I think one option that we could consider in the future, we don't have to make a decision tonight, is if we were to assess a fee, we could waive it with compliance. Because I agree with what Commissioner Simpson said, that oftentimes we're dealing with violations where it was clear that there was a willful intrusion into the wetlands or the regulated area for a variety of different reasons. Here, I believe it was unintentional, and there was favorable action by the owner and his team to try and reconcile once it was brought to their attention. That's all.
Okay, so I think what I'm hearing from people is tonight's not the night to make any recommendations on any fines, if any. Correct?
Agree.
Agreed.
I
Agreed.
This is Mark.
Agreed.
Yes.
Okay, so Shannon, we're okay. They can, I guess, start doing the work because we said okay to that, and we'll hold off on making any determination on fines until a later date. And
Okay.
they'll work closely with you and the planning office.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay.
Chuck and Michael will follow up with you tomorrow or Friday.
Very good.
Thank you for getting on, and Matthew, thanks for joining us as well.
Thank you.
Next item, 1179 Farmington Avenue, Plant 17 LLC. I don't know where to start.
Okay, well, hang on, because I want to make sure that we have everyone, Bob, that we need to have as part of that conversation, so. Okay, Bill, I can see you. Can you hear me, and are you on?
Yes, and Mr. Majewski's here with me too.
Okay. There's someone that is on as an attendee, as an MJ Hayes. Are they here as part of your process, and do you need me to add them in?
Yes. He's just listening.
That's fine. Okay, okay, that's fine. So if they're just listening in, that's fine. Okey doke. So, and Bill, so it's just you and Stanley that need to be able to participate in the conversation then this evening.
Right.
Okay, good. Mr. Hannon, do you want to start?
Where? So for this particular situation, we have a cease and desist order that was issued for conduct of a regulated activity without a permanent property located at 1179 Farmington Avenue. We did have a site walk out there, and Ned, you were there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, what we appear to be looking at is a significant amount of floodplain land that has been filled. We got some information the last meeting going back to a 2017 meeting in the planning office about some things that were supposed to have been done for the site, including like a topo map and things of that nature, which actually would greatly assist us today because I don't think anybody has any idea as to how much material may have been moved around on that site and how the elevations have been changed. So being out at the site, I think people were able to identify a number of the problems that occurred. So I guess now we're waiting to find out how this is all going to be addressed. And I'm not sure what plans the company has proposed. That, I mean, we were talking about having a soil scientist go out there from the town, Shannon? George Logan was supposed to go out there, and you wanted to make sure that you were invited when he went out to the site to witness some of the testing and stuff that he's going to be doing. Has that occurred yet?
So I think it would be appropriate to have the owner and his attorney speak to give us an update as to consultants that they have engaged with respect to this and scope of work for those consultants and timing. I did have a conversation with Mr. Logan yesterday. We spoke for about half an hour, and I spoke to Attorney Galsky this morning for a little bit of time. But why don't we put let them speak and tell us where they stand with starting these investigations.
Okay.
Okay. Based upon the communications we had last week that I had with Shannon, we've contacted George Logan, and based upon what we talked about that Shannon was looking for and suggesting, we would agree with that. And really what we're waiting for is to see if you, the commission members, based upon your site walk, have any further areas that you would want investigated, or test holes done, that type of thing, that may increase the scope of work that he's prepared to do. We were out there along the edge of the wet meadow is the term we're using for now. We were out as far as where the sand piles have not been flattened, and you could see water along the edge and the bottom of the sand in there. The soil scientist is prepared to go out and do test holes along that whole edge area. If need be, he can come back further into where the sand was where the earth material was deposited. One thing we wanted to ask for you is if he needs to do that, if we could have permission to use a backhoe to do it. He can identify that, and if need be, that could be with guidance from the town or submitting a plan to the town ahead of time. I know that the area, based upon your conversations, the area to the far east of the site is an area of concern, and I wonder if you have any particular questions or areas that you want investigated out there. We're prepared to get either Mr. Logan or anybody else who may need to go further than what he can do to get out there and investigate it. And so we're looking for the feedback from you for tonight. But again, we're committed to, taking the investigatory steps that you want to see done. We are also collecting and trying to come up with maps and other data that we had. Before this property was purchased, it was known to have been a filled site for decades. We did do a lot of due diligence. There was an outside company that was hired to go out there and do investigation as well. So we're trying to put those pieces together also. This started back in 1951, and then there was a significant amount of the property to the west along the river that was excavated. It looks like, you know, maps that we have that showed this wet meadow had all been excavated, had all been water at one point, and then it was all filled in again. So, you know, significant amount, you know, and it's a large area, and a significant amount of disturbance over the years, so.
But I also think based on the maps that Shannon was showing the last time, I don't think there's been a whole lot of work done since, was it, Shannon, 2005? On some of the aerial photos where it looked as though the location was pretty much left alone at that point in time.
So there's the 2005, there's 6. So 6 would have been the last time that the work was done in the pond. And then by 2008, it was starting to revegetate. And then I've got, there's 10, 12, 14, 13. So
we're looking at 14, 15 years where that area has not really been worked.
Correct.
Okay.
Roughly, yeah. Yep. At least a solid 10 years that it's been allowed to revegetate. There it is, it's 2010. You can see there's a loop access, but all of this is still very green and highly vegetated as it is and there's 6 where it's, so.
Okay, so I guess we'll kind of continue the way we've been doing it as far as any questions or comments people have. So Rich, I'll start with you.
I guess what I'm kind of wondering is if we could get some kind of a scope of work that the property owner is proposing, and then we could kind of take a look at what he's proposing, and if there's any gaps that we might see, then we could suggest some improvements, and then go from there. That's all I have.
Emily?
I have none at this moment.
Dave?
I would repeat previous requests to, we are asked to add to scope of work, but we don't have the scope of work to add to. That's my comment.
Robert?
Yeah, I would agree that we, as the commission, probably need more information. So I think in addition to an assessment by George Logan, we should probably also have an assessment by a biologist as well as to what impacts have occurred to the wetland and the floodplain and the ecosystems that are there. From my perspective, when we did the site walk, it looked to me like there was definitely fill that ran right up to regulated areas, and what was impossible for us to determine because we were standing on several feet of fill is, what was covered over that should have been protected. So I think how the site is assessed, I'm not opposed to a backhoe because there's definitely a deep fill layer that will need to be removed before a soil scientist or other environmental professional could make their assessment. But a better piece of equipment may be something like a geoprobe that will actually give you a core boring. A backhoe is, a little quicker, a little cruder, but it's going to be harder to find the layers that the soil scientists and biologists would need. So it may be something where a drill rig or a geoprobe may be the better machine to help identify the regulated areas. The other thing that I would request here is, while it sounds like, Attorney Gowski, that you're going to be working to put together file background, I would want to have some sort of certification statement that the file history was provided in totality. It's my experience that sometimes when file reviews are done, there may be key assessments and reports that are not provided, but only reports and assessments that may convey a certain perspective. So if there is a site assessment that was done pre-purchase or post-purchase, then that report, that assessment should be identified. And I think whatever we receive for file history should include a certification statement that all documents that were known to exist have been identified. Those are my comments.
Thank you. Those are very helpful.
Thanks, Robert. Mark?
I have really no comments at this point. There's so much more information needs to be provided before I can even make an intelligent assessment of what needs to be done. That's it.
Ed?
Yeah, I have a couple concerns. Well, in regard to the scope, I would like some assessment of the trees removed or knocked over. I know that when you walk along the area where the berm or the berm with the roadway is on the side closer to Route 4, there's a lot of large trees that are knocked over and taken down. And I would like the scope to include some assessment on tree removal along with the soil removal. And the other thing, I think, George Logan is a soil scientist?
Correct.
Okay. Well, I don't know if he's the appropriate person, but I had some concerns about some of the steep cuts that are left in place there in a sandy soil. And I understand this is private property and nobody should be there, but I saw a lot of quad tracks there and you know, so I do think there's people in the property, and if they're to ride close to the edge of a steep sand cut, you know, it could easily give way and then bury them on their way down. So I would, you know, I think part of this restoration is going to have to include making the area safe where these steep cuts are. And I think that should be included in the scope. That's all I have right now. Oh, and the backhoe, I wouldn't have a problem with the backhoe or I mean, there's a lot of good-sized test pits that may need to be dug, and I think you are going to need some equipment out there.
Okay, I'm going to chime in. Somebody has a TV on in the background, and we're hearing it loud and clear. I need you to either mute yourself or turn the TV off. So there's background noise it's picking up in the microphone, please. Thank you. Okay, we can proceed. Thank you.
So are we ready to go to the next person?
I'm all set.
Okay, who is that, Jay?
Yeah, hi. So I guess I don't know how to say this. I guess I'm at a little bit of a loss because I still have some hesitation about being out in public, so I did not get to be on the sidewalk. So I guess my statement would be I agree with what sounds like the recommendations of the other commissioners that we need more information before we can make a decision. So that's my only statement. I don't have any questions.
Guy?
Bob, some years ago, Senator Blumenthal proposed a bill to preserve the Farmington River. And part of it passed, and it had come down this far, you know?
You talk about the wild and scenic?
I think so. The whole idea was to preserve the I forget how many feet on either side of the Farmington River. Didn't come down as far?
The wild and scenic designation does include this section of the Farmington River.
Now, are
That's for
there
the
any
lower, done by Murphy not too long ago.
by Murphy? All right. Well, I remember it from the TPZ, and it was Blumenthal and the other senator at the time. Okay. Does that have any prohibition as to what can go on in this particular area?
The National Park Service is aware of the current situation, and they are directly involved with the designation for the wild and scenic rivers. So National Park Service is aware, DEP is aware, Army Corps is aware, and EPA is aware.
Are they
I have
making,
had,
excuse me, are they making
They-
any observations to us as to what should happen?
I have not received, so they were notified. There were minor follow-up inquiries on their part via email with wanting to better understand the nature of the work that had and had not occurred. My last correspondence was to Corey Rose at the Army Corps on May 22nd via email. And it basically gave a summary of the due diligence that Bruce Sear and I had done through that week from basically the 15th to the 22nd, our meeting on the 20th, and the site walk that Bruce Sear and I did with Attorney Galsky the morning of the 22nd. And I have not had a response to that email. And on the email was Corey Rose, Liz Lacey with National Park, one or two individuals from DEEP, and a gentleman with EPA. And a copy of that email was sent to Attorney Galsky today, I believe it was, when I shared that with him. It's up to them, their own investigation. I don't have any, other than sharing the information. I offered to share all our documents. Nobody has asked me for any of our documentation or any of the due diligence that we've done to date.
That's unfortunate, I think. That's all I have.
I do have a few questions. I mean, one, even just walking out on the site the other day, it looks as though wetlands have been filled or buried. There's some documentation from when the temple was being built that there were some wetland areas out on the site, which they appear to be significantly under, I don't know how many feet of dirt. Being out on the site where a lot of the grading has occurred, and I'm assuming the soil compacted, looks like there's a bunch of invasives popping up now. So if that's the case, I don't know if that's something that came from taking down a portion of that berm, and now you've spread seeds all over, maybe up to 10 acres of land that's now going to be covered with invasive species. So that's an issue. The amount of time and effort that went into moving all of this material, I've got to ask a basic question. Why did you do it in the first place?
It was done, the overall plan for this particular area is probably to have Bridgehampton Road go through from east to west. And that would require taking down the berm. It was believed that the area that was piled had been all significantly disturbed in the past. There was no belief that it was inland wetlands, that we were even anywhere close, that the work was even anywhere close to the inland wetlands. And it was just done as a further restoration of the site, basically.
I'm sorry, but I find that to be a little bit of a stretch. I mean, there are piles of crushed stone that are just dumped into a wetland area. Some of the other areas we've seen, the dirt's been pushed into a wetland area, so I guess people weren't being too careful when they started moving that soil around. I mean, does anybody have an idea as to how much fill has been moved in that area? Or how deep the fill is?
We can come up with estimates of that.
Well, I think that's going to be part of the testing that needs to be done out there. I mean, I think I agree with Robert that I'm not sure a backhoe is going to be the best bet, but then some of the material that's been moved appears as though it was a really fine wetland type soil. Now that it's been exposed to the sun, it's almost like concrete. So I'm just wondering how much trouble Logan might have trying to do some of the testing on that site, to even get down to find out how deep the fill has been and how long before he gets to the wetland areas. Because it looks like there's been some 15, 20 feet, maybe even more, of the edge of the wetlands that have all been buried. So a lot of this is going to come down to what ends up happening with some of the experts that are coming in. But this is not a good situation.
Can I ask the commission a question? Thoughts on having a surveyor present for all or a portion of this investigation so that as George is moving fill back, that we're getting the top of the fill that's placed and the bottom, so we can have spot grades taken and start to get a handle on this based at the same time the investigation is taking place that George Logan is conducting?
I think that's almost a must, if not a must.
We can do that.
I would agree. Statute.
Okay, thank you.
Shannon, can you go through the picture? Is anybody else, or is everybody done?
I think that's, yeah, what would you like me to do, Phil?
Can you go through the pictures that you sent? It was the additional ones that you sent either last Thursday or Friday in anticipation of today. Yeah, I think it's that one. Is that the one with 14? Yeah. I'm not sure where that one is, but
so
where that one was
kind
taped.
of at the start where the fill, it's almost at the start of the fill piles. So you can
Now, for example, I was out there this morning, and this area here was almost entirely dry. The water was gone.
Sure. We haven't had any substantial rain in 2 weeks.
Well, where we are in Plainville, we got about probably 2 inches in the last hour and a half. So it could be inundated again. Can you go through again? Can you go through them?
Of course I will, yeah. So there's this one.
Okay, that's just looking the other way.
Correct.
And I think down, go back if you would.
Sure.
I think down in that area where the puddle is, based upon the site walk, I think that's an area where you believe that there may have been topsoil removed, if you will. Correct?
Did I believe that or George believe that?
I think somebody had made that comment.
Well, I think wetland material, because as we progress further in the photos, you'll see all the material and the piles of material that was pushed to the far eastern end, and then the piles of sand. So I think this is an area where, yes, some of the surface layer of material to an unknown depth was removed and pushed to the far east side of the property.
Right.
Yes.
So we're prepared to sample all in these areas here. It's our belief that the old historic road that shows up, you know, the passway that passes through the site, you can see is probably,
This got well, I gotta go back a few. Wrong way, sorry.
there you go. Yeah, you can see
Yeah,
it there, yeah. Is probably very close to the edge of that picture that was up there just a minute ago. Maybe
Okay.
at the bottom, go to the picture in the bottom left there, the small one. Yeah, blow that up. That road is probably in the area of where your pointer is right now.
Okay.
And, you know, so we will try to locate that.
Okay.
Okay, why don't you keep going through?
Sure. Continue?
Yeah, and you know,
So this
yeah,
is
there you go.
the material
That's
that's all,
That's the far east of the site, right?
I believe so, or close to it.
And
I believe
and that
this is
material
material that was pushed to the end.
and that material will be investigated. Correct? That's
Well,
'cause
I'm not sure,
'cause we-
now that it's big, I'm not really sure how so I can talk to George about it while he's on site, and I don't know how he's gonna do that unless he's gonna take a sample, a hunk of the material, and then put it through a sieve analysis to try to figure it out. But now that it's not in situ and it has been piled and allowed to bake in the sun, I don't know that he can make an assessment of the type of material in a traditional sense. So we can certainly discuss that with George on the property.
Okay. Because that's an area that we, you know, when we were out there with you and Bruce, that you would seem to have interest in. I just want to make sure that that's an area you want to see investigated as well.
I think he's got to do that entire perimeter all the way down.
Yeah, okay.
So that entire edge from where the wet marsh starts, or where we think it starts, all the way down to the north tip of the pond.
Right, and then that
we've
stockpile at the end, yeah.
Right, and then we've got to incrementally work ourselves north off of that edge so that he can start to figure out where the limit of the wet soil is.
Right. Okay, you want to go through and see if there's anything else?
Sure.
Because this is an area where you didn't do the site walk, you know, either. This
No,
was beyond
we
the
did
site.
not. Right, which is why I shared these. This is beyond the site walk, and it was immediately, it's the area immediately south of Central Way. So that's the pond. That's the pond from the top of one of the embankments, looking down into the pond at the eastern end. More of the same material pushed. And this is where the pond enters the Farmington River. And another view. So have you received the scope of work from George Logan yet and his proposal?
Not written, but verbal. And then, you know, based upon the comments that we got tonight, I'll transmit that to him, and he's going to have to incorporate that. Especially
Okay.
the comments by and suggestions from Commissioner Eisner.
Okay, I think George planned on having a biologist. I think he had a biologist on staff that he intended to have incorporated into this anyhow. And particularly somebody that's familiar with plant species and how to perhaps best address the spread of knotweed that is now going to bloom and ripen across the site. And I think the only other thing that Mr. Eisner suggested was the historic documents being turned over. So, and then you'll need a surveyor to coordinate with George, whether, I don't know if that's something that the construction company has in-house, so you'll be using an outside surveyor, but we'll need that coordinated as well.
Yeah. And you're gonna wanna go out there at least, sometime coordinate with George. Right?
Correct. Yeah, I need, the town needs to be part of this the entire way, yes. So I need to know when, I don't need like a week's notice, but, 24 to 48 hours notice that George is gonna be on site, and I'll meet him at his convenience, and we will be out there, and as I explained to George, and and I think I said to you, my intent is not to be in his back pocket in a shadow the entire time he's doing this, but we will be in and out of the property the entire time he is there.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I don't have the luxury of being there the entire time he is there.
Shannon, this is Bob. One of the things that you may need to talk to George about first, unless a written proposal comes in and we know exactly how he's proposing to do his testing. But based on what Robert was suggesting in terms of how to go about digging holes on the site to do the investigation, you may need to double check with George and get something squared away so we know exactly what kind of equipment's going to be used on site too.
Okay.
This is Statchin. I heard mention that George might have a biologist. I did see a lot of deer track in the mud and the dirt, so I don't know if it'd be possible for any kind of evaluation of wildlife impact in that.
He's intending to do that.
Okay.
Especially the birds.
Yeah, he's already noted the birds, he's noted the tadpoles, and is pretty certain the tadpoles that we've seen and witnessed and any frogs or anything that we've seen to date is not an endangered species, but he's well aware that this is something that he needs to keep his eye out for, and he actually intended to perhaps do an early morning investigation, or that's what he suggested to me, is that he may do something early morning when all the critters are out and active a little more, and get a better handle on what is occupying the site. But yeah, Bill, we are going to need a written scope of work from him so that we all have that as a benchmark to work from.
And then just be careful if you're down in this area, because we still don't know what that thing was that came out of the woods.
Yeah, he seems to think it was a beaver. He thinks that if it was a muskrat, it would have slunk away without making so much noise.
Okay.
So it didn't have that signature slap of the tail on the water that you normally have with a beaver. But yeah, he's aware. I let him know that we definitely disturbed something or someone when we came down to that confluence.
We did. Any other comments from commission members? No, so it sounds like we at least have some marching orders.
Okay. Bill, anything else you folks want to share?
Nope, but we'll, look forward to communicating with you and your thoughts and your input, as it goes along.
Okay. So, yep, keep me posted on when the proposal comes in from George and timing, and as I said, this will be a recurring topic for us. So we'll chat again with the commission in 2 weeks' time.
All right, I guess I would expect that we should certainly aim to have you a written proposal for 2 weeks, and maybe even a draft before then that you might be able to comment on.
I would hope that we're out in the field in 2 weeks.
Yeah, oh, yeah, yeah.
This written proposal should not, I've talked to George, you've talked to George. I don't think there's anything here that was discussed this evening that's really out of what George and I already discussed. And I would hope that within 2 weeks, 2 weeks from now, we're reporting back to the commission that we've already started field investigations.
Okay. So that's okay to do that so we would not need the commission's consent to go forward. They don't need to see the proposal first.
I'll share it with them when it comes in. If anybody has any great concerns, they'll let me know.
Okay, sounds fair. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okey doke.
Planners report.
As you know,
Which
the
is-
fun keeps going tonight. Okay. So planners report, and let me, hang on here. I've got a lot of talk. More, what's down. All right, I have, so it's under planner's report, but I've added the homeowner is on the line. If we need him or need any clarification on anything to help with this discussion. The homeowner at 6 Pine Tree Shilling is requesting to put an in-ground pool in their backyard. I included the site plan, aerial, wetland plan with the aerial and the photos. So what you're looking at here is the homeowner's survey plan. They're at the cul-de-sac of Pine Tree Shilling, and the pool will be located in their backyard. This approximately is the location of their existing shed. This is the home. There's the cul-de-sac, just in case anyone needs help with the orientation. The existing tree line is kind of just to the south edge of the shed and runs diagonally through the property and comes basically to about this location. It's about 3 to 4 feet off of the edge of where the pool is shown here. And it just basically cuts straight across. And you can see that it's a darker copy of the aerial to stand in, but this is the shed, the tree line just back here, and it arcs a little bit. It's not a linear line, so there's a little wiggle to that existing edge of tree canopy, but it's basically right in here. This is approximately the pool location shown on the aerial map, and the homeowner is looking to, as part of what's needed for the pool and to get the concrete walk around the pool and fencing, just grade out from the pool back approximately 25 feet. There are trees. There's approximately 10 to 12 trees that will come down. 4 of them are very tall, spindly pine trees that are in poor health that should come down anyway. The rest of them, and there's, I think, so of the 10 to 12, there's 3 to 4 of them that are in poor health that have to come down regardless. So that takes care of that. This shows how the wetland is depicted on the GIS, right? And I know all of you are familiar with the fact that this is the soil survey delineation from the 70s of how this would look. This is not an on-the-ground survey. You'll note that it's going into the house, and the shed is located approximately here in this location. as I noted in my email, I did some test pits when I was out there yesterday, because this is a fun thing to do. So I put the shovel in, into the wooded area, and approximately opposite the, the first O, the edge of pool, and then over here just off the edge of house. And in this area, it was very loose material, topsoily material, even down, it's just organic earth litter for the first foot. I didn't really go much farther than that. I came down into this area, and within the top 6 inches was the dense, definitely more dense material. Walking the property yesterday, there wasn't any obvious signs of regular inundation in the lawn. You'll recall a few years ago, we had a site walk on this property. The property owner had cleared back into this area, and it was very mucky when we walked, and it was very rich black soil there, and water, standing water, and a very difficult material to work with. I would not characterize the soil in the back of 6 pine tree shilling the same way. It is definitely not that boggy, very poorly drained soil that we saw just a few homes away. So yeah, it would be indicative that this wetland area is really more along over here than it is behind this home. Here's some of the photos. So this is the existing backyard and the existing patio that you were able to see in the aerial photo. The orange spray paint is the limit of the pool. So you can see that. You can see that the orange is just a few feet off the edge of trees and shrubs that are here. And basically what the homeowner is asking to do is remove this first perimeter row of trees, and then approximately 20 feet back from that first perimeter is a second perimeter of trees, and he's agreed to leave that second naturalized row of substantial trees. There's some straggly stuff in between. There's no notable invasive. There's no multiflora rose back there. It's an forested upland area in that back wooded area. So that's what we're looking at. So the homeowner is requesting to put the pool in, and I'm requesting or would like a determination as to whether or not the commission is okay with this proceeding as agent review, and then the notification will be put in the newspaper and they'll be allowed to proceed, obviously under our direction, and we'll still be involved because a building permit's needed, so all the usual inspections that go with that, including erosion control, will take place, or if the commission wants a full application.
Rich?
I don't have any questions. It certainly appears that this is not a wetland area.
Okay.
Emily?
Emily's been having some trouble. Let me see if she's, it looks like we might have lost Emily.
Okay. Dave?
I just had a procedural question. Last October, we had two pools. Seems like kind of a similar situation to this. And we decided that it was as of right permitted. I was wondering what's the difference between that and this agent review?
Not much.
Okay.
Not much, there's really not much difference. The agent review goes, there's a notification in the newspaper and a 15-day appeal period, as opposed to a determination that it's permitted as of right. This is a little more work because of the amount of trees that are coming down than with the other applications. Those were already in established yards within an upland area that had been clearly surveyed and clearly delineated. This is an area, because the age of the home is 1972, I don't have that clear delineation, so there's differences with respect to the base information and the scope of work.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
That's all I have.
Robert?
My biggest concern was addressed by Shannon's email today. I wasn't clear as to whether the clearing was within the upland review area or the wetland area. It was clarified that the pool and the clearing are upland reviews, so I agree that, or I think it should be an agent review versus full application.
Mark?
Nothing at this time.
Ned?
I agree. I think it should be an agent review.
Jay?
I don't have anything. I'm just curious about the agent review, but Shannon explained it already, so I'm good.
Guy?
I have no questions.
I don't have any questions, and I would go along with the agent review.
Okay, perfect. That's fine. It's not, we don't need a vote. It'll be documented, and that's fine. There's a consensus, and I'll work with Mark on getting that paperwork done tomorrow then. Mark, I will follow up with you tomorrow so that we can move forward. You won't need the full application, so I'll go over all the paperwork with you tomorrow, okay?
Great, thank you, and thank you, committee.
You're welcome. Have a good night.
You too.
Anything else on planners report?
No, thankfully.
Okay. For the minutes, approved minutes of May 20th, 2020.
Yeah.
I got a motion.
So
I did notice on the minutes that at the bottom of page 2, you have the show cause hearing at 1179 Forest Hills Drive, not Farmington Avenue.
Oh, thank you. All right, we'll correct. So it's amended as noted. Got it.
Do we move it as amended? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, we'll make that correction.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion, comments? Hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. And then,
Can we also approve the site walk notes from May 27th and May 28th? The 27th.
I was just getting the form out so I knew what the dates were. So we have the minutes we got for May 27th and May 28th, the site walk for 1179 Farmington Avenue and 45 West Avon Road. Can I get a motion on that?
So moved by Robert.
Second? Is there a second?
I would
Second,
second
Stan.
it. I wasn't on one of the walks.
Yeah, that's my problem too, Mark.
Okay, it does, as long as you read it and it makes sense and you didn't pick up on a typo like we had on the meeting notes, then we're all set. It's just,
Mark,
if you're,
I'll second that.
you read it.
Oh, so we don't need to abstain or anything then?
Correct.
Okay.
So, have a motion seconded. Those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? So moved. And it looks like 9:10 will end the Wetlands Commission meeting, and at 9:10, we'll start the Conservation Commission meeting. And I don't think there's too much there. Other business?
No, I don't think we have land acquisitions yet. Liz is holding a meeting next week, is that right? She's doing a Zoom meeting next week, I believe? Or is it the end of this week?
Typically, it's the second week, yeah.
Okay, so next week. Okay, I'm pretty sure she's planning on doing a Zoom meeting next week.
Okay,
So,
and you
and,
took off my paperwork.
yep, so you're all set. Your resignation from the Land Acquisition Committee is in place. And Ned's appointment is being added to the town council agenda, and town council meets next Tuesday?
Yep.
Monday or Tuesday. And Ned is on, that appointment is on that agenda. So it's my understanding.
And Shannon, Liz is aware of the change in personnel, correct?
Oh, yeah, she's been CC'd the whole way. Yep,
Okay, good.
Yep.
Okay, so if there's no other business, planners report?
Nothing other than what do we have? Simple recycling has started back up. We've had a few hiccups with pickups in some neighborhoods. So if you're aware of missed pickups, or if you're out chatting and it happens to come up and somebody says something, there's a couple of things. There's an 800 number on the bag to call for a missed pickup, and they can be collected. They can call my office, or they can call the Highway and Grounds office. We're trying to track this, and we're trying to determine if the missed pickups are a result of something with simple recycling, or something with our waste management recycling driver. Because our recycling drivers have a GPS tablet that they use, since they go through the neighborhoods first in the wee hours of the morning or early hours of the morning. And every time they hit the pink bag, they're indicating such on a tablet, and that information then is downloaded by Simple Recycling. It streamlines their pickup process. So there's an opportunity for human error on two ends, and we're trying to figure out where that error is coming from. So just, if you hear of anyone that happens to be complaining, I've had my pink bag out for a week and nobody's doing anything, tell them to pick up the phone and call somebody so that we can actually functionally do something with it. So,
Okay.
so I think that's all I've got.
I haven't gotten close enough to read it, but where is the household hazardous waste collection going on this weekend?
Oh, that is up in Simsbury, at Simsbury's, at their highway office area. I can send an email. I don't have the address off the top of my head, but it will be a full household hazardous waste like we're used to doing here in the spring, including shredding.
Do they do electronics in that?
Yep. The full thing that we have here, all the services that we normally have here, they have there up in Simsbury. I can get everyone the address.
I think, Robert, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I would say there's another option for reporting a missed pickup for Simple Recycling. You can go to their website and you can just put in your address information. That's another way of reporting a missed pickup. So Shannon, my street, Trotter's Glen, was missed last Tuesday. And I just went online to schedule the appointment.
Okay, and then did everybody get picked up ultimately?
I may have been the only resident, and there were 3 full bags, so it would have been hard for the driver to miss.
Gotcha, okay. And you said last Tuesday, okay, thanks,
Yeah,
Robert.
not yesterday, but a week ago, Tuesday.
Gotcha.
Yeah, this is Rich Berlandi. I've had that problem multiple times with missed pickups, and I did go on the website and called them. Supposedly they're gonna pick us up on Friday, but we'll see how that works.
Okay. All righty. Thank you, folks. I appreciate the feedback.
Okay, so that's it for planners report?
Yes, sir.
Okay, minutes. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes of May 20th, 2020 for the Conservation Commission meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Motion on the floor, seconded. Those in favor?
Aye.
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 Abstaining? Okay, sounds like we're done.
Okay.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Good night,
All I
everyone.
can-
Everybody.
Thank you.